Howdy folks, my name is Sheridan. I think I'm going to type it up in the thing down below, but I'm going to do something that I haven't done in nearly half a decade, mainly because my main audience for it is sitting at Freyja's table. My beloved passed away 5 some odd years ago, and now I think it's time. So, with no further ado, I shall perform for you Dave Barrys Year in Review 2020. And what a hell of a year it's been. Okay. Or, as it says here, 2020 was a year of non-stop awfulness. How about that? Like I said, it's by Dave Barry, not by me. Yada yada yada. Copyrights, all that shit. Okay. First published December 24th, 2020. Updated December 27th. So, hey, what about that? Now, here we go. We're trying to think of something nice to say about 2020. Okay, here it goes. Nobody got killed by murder hornets. At least as far as we know. That's pretty much it. In the past, writing these annual reviews, we have said harsh things about previous years. We owe those years an apology. Compared to 2020, all previous years, including the disco era, were a golden age of human existence. This is a year of non-stop awfulness, a year where we kept saying that it couldn't possibly get worse, and it always did. This was the year where our only moments of genuine, unadulterated happiness were when we were able to buy toilet paper. Which is fitting, because 2020 was one long, howling, Category 5 crap storm. We certainly don't want to relive this year, but our job is to review it, and if you would prefer to skip this exercise in masochism, we completely understand. If, however, you wish, for some sick reason, to re-experience 2020, now is the time to put on your face mask, douse your entire body in hand sanitizer, and then, to be safe, don a hazmat suit as we look back at the unrelenting insanity of this hideous year. Starting with January, which begins with all of Washington, D.C., as well as parts of Virginia and Maryland, gripped in the gripping historic drama of the impeachment of Donald Trump. Remember that? How gripped we were? Now, to set the stage, back in mid-November, the House of Representatives passed 2 articles of impeachment, after which Speaker Nancy Pelosi, in accordance with the U.S. Constitution, handed out souvenir pins. Everyone expected that Pelosi would send the articles to the Senate, but as of early January, the Senate had not received them. People were wondering if Pelosi, with various official duties and hairdresser appointments, had simply forgot to send the articles, or maybe she tried to send them, but because of bureaucratic snafu, they wound up in a different federal agency, like the Coast Guard. Eventually, however, the articles did arrive in the Senate, where Majority Leader Mitch the Undertaker McConnell promises the impeachment will receive full and fair consideration. He was, of course, joking. But this is not obvious because even when Mitch is in a jovial mood, he looks like a man casting a kidney stone the size of the Hope Diamond. Meanwhile, in other political news, all eyes are on Iowa as it prepares for the caucuses, which are closely scrutinized because the first opportunity for a tiny group of unrepresented voters to engage in an incomprehensible and deeply flawed process by which they anoint presidential candidates who traditionally go on to fail. This year, in an effort to modernize the caucuses, the Iowa Democratic Party has upgraded from its old-fashioned manual reporting procedures to a modern, state-of-the-art app. based on the same software that runs the Boeing 737 MAX airliner. Oops. The international news. The big story is a U.S. targeted drone strike ordered by Trump, which kills Iranian military leader Qasem Soleimani. And I can't pronounce that. Thereby triggering World War III and forcing the U.S. to reinstate the military draft. At least on Twitter. Iran responds, and this is a good indicator of what kind of year was going to be, by shooting down a Ukrainian airliner. Elsewhere abroad, Chinese news media reported that a man in a city named Wuhan died of a mysterious new virus. This is not considered a big deal in the U.S. because it has absolutely nothing to do with either the impeachment or the Iowa caucus. A much bigger international story concerns Prince Harry and Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, who announced via Instagram that they are sick and tired of being part of the British royal family and just want to be regular, normal, everyday, hard-working folks making millions of dollars solely because one of them was born into, and the other one married into, the British royal family. This plunges Great Britain into a crisis the likes of which has not been seen since Brexit. The crisis finally ends when, after a royal summit meeting with Queen Elizabeth II, described by participants as frank and heartfelt, Harry and Meghan are beheaded. In sports news, Major League Baseball is rocked by the scandal of the release of a report concluding that the Houston Astros engaged in an elaborate multi-year cheating scheme, which critics charge enabled the team to win the 2017 World Series, as well as 6 congressional seats in the 2018 midterm elections. By way of punishment, the league sending a clear message to future would-be cheaters. Rules that all players involved in the scheme will continue to play at baseball in exchange for enormous amounts of money. Speaking of scandal, in February, Washington, D.C. and its immediate suburbs remain gripped by the U.S. Senate's historic impeachment trial of President Trump, with Democratic prosecutors arguing that Trump illegally pressured Ukrainian leaders to benefit himself politically, while the Republican defense team, employing an alibi strategy, claims that Trump was playing golf at the time. Under the watchful eye of Chief Justice John Roberts, who is kept from nodding off by a law clerk armed with a pellet gun, everyone, in accordance to Senate rules, repeats everything 127 times, after which the Republican majority, to the surprise of anyone who has an IQ higher than a sponge cake, lower than a sponge cake, acquits the Republican president. Washington and its suburbs immediately start looking around for a new historic thing which to be gripped by. In the midst of the impeachment drama, Trump delivers the State of the Union address, an awkward affair which begins with Speaker Pelosi refusing the traditional high privilege and distinct honor introduction, and then Trump refusing to shake Pelosi's hand, and then Pelosi tearing up her copy of Trump's speech, and then Trump hawking a loogie on Pelosi's suede pumps. Okay, the loogie thing didn't happen, as far as we know. In other political news, Iowa Democratic officials sense that there may be a problem with their new app when it declares the winner of the state's caucuses with 43 million delegates is Walter Mondale. Haven't heard about him in a while. Followed by the Houston Astros, who also won the Super Bowl. This fiasco does not sit well with other Democratic candidates who realize that they have wasted an entire year trudging around Iowa, eating fried objects on sticks, and pretending to care about people from Iowa. Things go more smoothly for the Democrats in New Hampshire primary and the Nevada caucuses, with Bernie Sanders emerging as a clear front-runner, which only seems to make him angrier. A new challenger emerges in the form of charisma-impaired billionaire Mike Bloomberg, who uses his personal fortune to hire a vast army of consultants to supply him with powerful arsenal of focus group tested politics, retorts, memes, jokes, and humanoid personality traits. Nevertheless, he struggles in the debates, the low point coming when Elizabeth Warren, during a heated exchange about a non-disclosure agreement, pulls the waistbands of Bloomberg's underpants up over top of his head, a debate tactic known as the atomic wedgie, first performed by Lincoln on Douglas in 1858. Despite all of the existing political development, the number one concern of the American public, based on the amount of passionate debate it generates on the internet, is the burning issue of whether it is or is not okay to recline your airplane seat. Remember? Those were good times. As February draws to a close, 2020 seems to be shaping up to a typical election year, with all the political media complexes repeatedly engulfed in raging apocalyptic dramas that the regular human public pretty much ignores. And then, unfortunately, comes, and I'm not kidding here folks, this is exactly what he's written here, he refers to as Marple. So, Marple, which starts off calmly enough as the Democratic Party, desperate to find an alternative to the 132-year-old white guy named Bernie Sanders, settles for a 132-year-old white guy named Joe Biden, who cruises to the series of primary victories after replacing no malarkey with a brand new campaign slogan, somewhat alert at all times. Biden is endorsed by most of his Democratic opponents, including Mike Bloomberg, who spent more than $500 million of his own campaign, which seems like a lot of money, until you consider that he won the American Samoa Caucus, narrowly arrowing Tulsi Gabbard, who spent $13.50. And then, sprinkled in amid all the political coverage, we begin to see reports that this coronavirus thing might be worse than we've been led to believe. Although the first authorities seem to think it's basically the flu and there's no reason to panic, but all of a sudden there seems to be no hand sanitizer for sale anymore. Which makes some sense, but there's also no toilet paper, as if people were planning on pooping for weeks on end. And then we learn that Tom Hanks has the virus. And now they're saying that it's a lot worse than the flu and that we need to wash our hands and not touch our faces and maintain social distance of 6 feet and have to use an abundance of caution and flatten the curve, whatever the curve is. But then they're also saying that you don't need the face masks, but no scratch, and that's how they're saying that we do need face masks, but now nobody has any face masks, But hey, here's a funny meme about toilet paper. But oh my god, look at these statistical disease models. We're all going to die! But Trump says that maybe this hydroxy something medicine will work. But no, it won't. And yes, it will, but it work, but no, it won't. And now they're saying that there won't be enough ventilators or hospital beds or PPE. And Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx are saying that somebody has to shelter at home or else we're all going to definitely die. Hey, there's another funny toilet paper meme, but seriously, what is PPE, and what's the difference between that and PPP, and where do we get all the ventilators when there's not enough hospital beds, and there's no sanitizer, and I keep touching my face, and they canceled the NBA, and can they even do that? No, wait, they canceled all the sports, and closed all the schools, and the colleges, and the stores, and the restaurants, and the bars, and the theaters, and the hair salons, and the parks, and the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans, and now they're saying that we need to stay home. For how long? And what about the toilet paper? I can't stop touching my goddamn face. And are you seriously telling me that this is because somebody ate the freaking bat? Maybe Amazon has toilet paper. Oh my god, they're sold out too. What's the deal with the toilet paper? Not another Zoom meeting. I'm tired of shouting at people in boxes. Maybe I should just shower. But wait, what's the point? There's a bunch of more funny memes. Oh my god, look at that stock market, the price of oil. Maybe I just peek on 401k. Oh my god, no! What are people doing with all the toilet paper? How long do we have to keep abundantly cautious? Well, what did Trump say about ventilators? And what did Dr. Birx and Fauci say about Trump and about the ventilators? And what did Trump say that they were going to do about the ventilators? Look at these models. We're all going to die. But Do we really want to go living in a world where there's no toilet paper and every single TV commercial sounds like, as we navigate these difficult times together, the National Association of Folding Chair Manufacturers wants you to know that we are committed to running these TV commercials with a somber narrator voice telling you how committed we are. Why would someone eat a goddamn bat? These memes are getting old. Do you think that Carol Baskin woman actually fed her husband to that tiger? Maybe we should order pizza tonight. I think we did pizza last night, though. Are you sure it's Tuesday? Because it feels more like a Thursday. Oh, please, God, no. Not another freaking Zoom meeting. Stop already with the memes. If the tiger ate her husband, wouldn't there be a skeleton somewhere? Are we flattening the curve yet, Dr. Felucci, Dr. Burgess? Because this is a recession. So, wait, maybe there's a depression. Look at the unemployment numbers. We're going to never recover this. If the virus doesn't kill us, we're all going to starve to death. We need money from the government. We need billions. No, we need trillions. We need more trillions. There's money coming from opening the economy up, but we're all going to die. Hey, I found some toilet paper. Oh, wait, it's only one ply, which is basically the same as using your bare hands. Thank God, I also found some hand sanitizer. And speaking of good news, Bernie Sanders is endorsing Joe Biden, so apparently they're both still alive. Hey, if I see one more meme, I'm going to puke in my face mask. I'm afraid to get on the scale. My thighs are basically 2 armadillo-sized wads of pizza, though. Hey, Dr. Burks, this is Felucci. Are we going to have a vaccine? And when we have herd immunity, when we're going to stand outside, when we're going to go back to work, what is this new normal? Good Lord, what did Trump say about the disinfectants? Don't inject Clorox, you idiots! Hey, what about the food chain? What about the reinfection? What about the second wave that they're showing in NFL draft? And Georgia is opening the tattoo parlors, and holy crap, now it's May. And we are, as a nation, exhausted. We literally sick and tired of the pandemic, but amid all the gloom, there is a ray of sunshine. As we go through this harrowing experience affecting all of America, and both red states and blue states, we're starting to realize our common humanity is more important than our political differences. Seriously, we all hate each other more than ever. We disagree about everything. When to reopen the economy, whether to wear a mask, whether to go to the beach, whether it's okay to say China, everything. Each side believes that it is motivated purely by reason, facts, and compassion, and that the other side is evil and stupid and sincerely wants people to die. Every issue is binary. My good side, the other side bad. My side good, other side bad. And there is no nuance. No open-mindedness. No discussion. On the other hand, there is going to start to get more toilet paper. President Trump continues to provide leadership in the crisis and repeatedly pointing out that he knows his incredible amount about viruses, more than the medical doctors, and is frankly doing a terrific job. For its part, the White House press corps, seeking, as always, to be fair and objective, asked the president's many probing questions, all which are variations of, "Why are you so despicable?" Somewhere in there, the president goes on Twitter to suggest, without evidence, that the MSNBC actor Joe Scarborough committed murder. But we've reached the point where this falls into the category of ho-hum. Meanwhile, in the basement somewhere in Delaware, Joe Biden and his campaign team have managed to procure a webcam, and they intend to use to log in to the internet, so that Joe's campaign can go viral, as soon as Joe decides what that means. In scandal news, the Justice Department moves to drop all charges against former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Outraged Democrats claim this is a travesty of justice. Outraged Republicans claim that this is proof that the deep state tried to stage a coup. And thus we're back to arguing about a 2016 election, which we're going to keep arguing about until everybody involved has been dead for 50 years. In a war and lifting note, America cheers the first manned space launch from U.S. soil in 9 years as the commercially built SpaceX rocket carrying 2 NASA astronauts blasts off from the International Space Station, only to discover upon arrival that it's been closed since 2014. Here we should at least mention the arrival of the Asian murder hornets. Hey, I live in Washington. I know about these things. In any other year, they would have been a huge story, comparable to famous celebrity pests of the past, such as Killer Bees or the cast of the Jersey Shore. But in 2020, there's simply too much competition, and the murder hornets end up living in a cheap motel near the Canadian border, their dreams of fame shattered. In sports, Major League Baseball tries to come up with a plan to salvage the 2020 season, a task that becomes more urgent each day as the Houston Astros have already run 137 games, all of them no-hitters. National Football League is also trying to adapt to the pandemic, exploring the possibility of a season with no fans, no coaches, and no players. We're thinking of just showing 60 minutes of referees throwing penalty flags and peering at replay monitors, says NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. Excuse me. So that really won't be all that different. Meanwhile, the National Hockey League admits that they stopped playing games in 2003, just nobody noticed. Hey, I like hockey, bite me. Towards the end of the month, the economy is starting to open up. The virus numbers in many places seem to be improving, and people are starting to venture out of their homes. For a few minutes, the nation seems to be groping its way an inch at a time towards relative calm. And then, wham! 2020 strikes again. This time in Minneapolis, where a horrendous killing of George Floyd at the hands of the police ignites the protest movement that quickly spreads across the nation, sometimes mutating into violence. In the past, such movements tended to lose energy, smothered under a thick cloud of platitudes. But this one has legs. And as we enter June, the protest movement grows in size, and the passion with which, frankly, not a whole lot of social distancing. In Washington, D.C., large crowds gather in front of the White House. President Trump, angered by reports that at one point he retreated to an underground bunker, states that he was in fact only inspecting the bunker and being responsible and explicitly assigned to the president by the Constitution right after where it says that he is in charge of foreign policy. To demonstrate that he is not the kind of leader who hides in bunkers, the president courageously goes outside after the protesters have been cleared away and personally walks several hundred feet to historic St. John's Church, where he holds up a Bible, or possibly a thesaurus. The important thing is that it was a serious-looking book with a strong visual, and at the time when this wounded and divided nation needs, more than ever, is strong visuals. For their part, Democrats, fed up with a long-standing pattern of systematic racism and police misconduct in the major U.S. cities, vow to bring out real reform, just as soon as they figure out who exactly is in charge of these cities. One much-discussed reform proposal is defunding the police, which is clearly defined by its proponents as taking the funding away from the police, as well as not taking the funding away from the police. Meanwhile, COVID-19 cases are rising alarmingly, especially in the South. President Trump has apparently decided the best way to deal with the pandemic as a chief executive is to occasionally tweet about it, focuses his effort on getting re-elected. He holds a rally in Tulsa where, addressing an issue of concern to all Americans, he explains in detail that the ramp he had to walk down at the West Point graduation ceremony was slippery and steep. The president gets a big hand from the crowd when, displaying leadership, he drinks from a water glass with one hand. During this period, the Biden campaign focuses its energies primarily on being in Delaware. Also, during that time, important news events are occurring in Europe, Asia, Africa, South America, and possibly even Canada. But we frankly do not have the time to think about those places. In sports, Major League Baseball, owners and players, faced with a very real threat that the Houston Astros will win the World Series unopposed, reach an agreement to hold a shortened season with a few COVID-related rule modifications. The batter's box will be an actual plexiglass box completely enclosing the batter. To minimize airborne saliva droplets, umpires will call balls and strikes by shouting into their elbows. Also, players must limit infield chatter to fewer than 10 syllables. For example, unacceptable. Hey, batter, 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 swing, batter, batter. Acceptable. Hey, batter, 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 swing. In the event the batter gets on base, all players from both teams will immediately be tested for the coronavirus at the end of 9 innings or 1 week. Whichever comes first, the team with the fewest positive tests will be declared the winner. Speaking of positive tests, in July, COVID-19 cases continue to rise sharply as some southern states, accompanied by what the World Health Organization describes as an alarming spike in smugness in some of the northern states, notably New York, where Governor Andrew Cuomo unveils a poster for sale at $11.50 commemorating, in a cartoony manner, New York's pandemic experience. Really, it's as if the White Star Line sold whimsical souvenirs about the Titanic. On July 4th, despite all the bad news and gloomy outlook, Americans paused to celebrate the independence of their nation by reducing entire neighborhoods to smoking rubble with illegal fireworks. In a decision that outrages Democrats, President Trump commutes the federal prison sentence of his longtime friend and political operative Roger Stone. The White House states that imprisoning the 67-year-old Stone would be inhumane because he has a medical condition that requires him to roam free at night seeking fresh human blood. Meanwhile, in Delaware, Joe Biden's team continues to ponder the question of who should be Joe's running mate. The goal being to find someone who A, is a woman, and B, has a name that Joe can remember. Kanye West announced he's running for president, representing the birthday party. Any other year, this would seem ridiculous. But it's 2020, and a lot of people are going, why not? In political news, the coronavirus continues to disrupt both major parties' convention plans. The Republicans, having already moved Trump's acceptance speech from the Spectrum Center to Charlotte, North Carolina, to the VyStar Veterans Memorial area in Jacksonville, Florida, announced that they are now considering the Rock and Roll Shoot bowling alley and gun range in Elkwood, Oklahoma, contingent on the availability of long enough extension cord. Democrats have also downsized their convention, which originally was going to be a 4-day event at the Wisconsin Center in Milwaukee, but is now just going to take mainly on Instagram. On the diplomatic front, the Trump administration announced, after tense high-level negotiations, that it has reached a peace agreement in which the U.S. troops will be withdrawn from Portland, Oregon, where for many weeks protesters have been seeking social justice via a combination of peaceful demonstration and arson. By far the month's most disturbing event occurs on July 15th when Twitter, responding to a cyber attack, temporarily suspended many verified blue checks accounts. Within minutes, emergency rooms in Washington, D.C. and New York are overwhelmed by media thought leaders whose brains literally exploding from the pressure of unreleased insights. Meanwhile, the rest of the nation, non-elite Americans, wander the streets aimlessly with no way to know what they should think. Fortunately, the situation only lasts a few hours, but it highlights the urgent needs of a federally mandated blue check media emergency tweet reserve, similar to the National Helium Reserve, but more gaseous. In sports, the Washington Redskins, bowing to the mounting public pressure, announced that they are changing their name, which critics say is offensive and insensitive. They will henceforth be known as the Pittsburgh Redskins. In Major League Baseball, the teams began a shortened season with stadium seats occupied by cardboard cutouts representing fans, except in the case of the Houston Astros, who have live human snipers. Speaking of threats, in August, President Trump escalates his attack on TikTok, a Chinese-owned social media app that threatens our national security by causing millions of Americans to learn stupid dances. while Chinese people are making useful products to sell to Americans. The president wants to force TikTok to be sold by Microsoft, apparently in the hope that Microsoft will render it completely unusable by the means of updates. In other foreign policy action, Trump brokers a historic Middle East peace agreement, which, along with the estimated 45 previous historic Middle East peace agreements, brings the Middle East one step closer to potentially being on the verge of reaching the brink of what may someday be a stepping stone to lasting peace. Although you shouldn't hold your breath. Meanwhile, at home in the nation's mood is increasingly tense and angry as Americans are bombarded all day, every day, with a constant stream of news about protests, boycotts, disruption, despair, and rage. And that's just on SportsCenter. California, as it traditionally does this time of year, bursts into flames. Adding the citizens' misery is a rolling electrical blackouts, possibly related to the fact that the state legislature banned all sources of electricity except windmills and 9-volt batteries. In politics, controversy swirls around the U.S. Post Service, which, until now, most Americans viewed as a non-sinister agency whose function, as authorized by the Constitution, was to faithfully, rain or shine, deliver vast quantities of bulk mail to us so that we can discard it unread. But now, there are reports that USPS mailboxes mysteriously disappearing from the streets, which Democrats charge as part of a sinister Trump administration plot to sabotage mail-in voting. The theory being that voters, having no place to deposit their mail-in ballots, will give up in despair and, flush them down the toilet or something. As the reader of this article, I will pause for a moment and say, and that is actually... I don't agree with that. It is a very serious issue. Okay, continuing. While this alleged conspiracy was being debated, Steve Bannon, former influential Trump aide with the uncanny ability to always look like he just woke up in a dumpster, that's true, is arrested. And this cannot be any sort of coincidence. Agents of the U.S. Postal Inspection Service. Bannon is charged with fraud in connection with a GoFundMe project called We Build the Wall, which was supposedly raising money for President Trump's largely imaginary wall between U.S. and Mexico. Although, according to prosecutors, a better name for the project would have been, we basically keep your money. Another legal development, Trump pardoned Susan B. Anthony, calling her, in impromptu remarks delivered as aides hustle reporters away, a terrific person who I look forward to inviting to the White House. In election news, Joe Biden makes history by choosing Kamala Harris as his running mate. If elected... Oh yeah, it's Kamala, sorry. I mispronounced that. If elected, she would become the first U.S. vice president whose name can be rearranged to spell I alarm a shark. I like that, actually. During the Democratic debates, Harris leveled some harsh criticisms at Biden, but Biden's campaign source says that, quote, Joe has forgotten all about that. Literally. For his part, Trump dismisses rumors that he might change running mates, telling reporters, I'm very happy about what's his name. Because of the pandemic, both parties and held their conventions virtually, which means that instead of endless hours of repetitive blather, the TV broadcast consists of endless hours of repetitive blather, but without the entertaining visuals of delegates in stupid hats. The Democrats adopt a sweeping platform filled with bold policy initiatives that nobody will ever look at again. The Republican platform consists of, quote, whatever is in the president's most recent tweet. Speaking of principles, in September, the death of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg triggers a classic display of Washington-style ethical consistency as both political parties, addressing the issue of when the vacancy should be filled, passionately embrace positions diametrically opposed to the ones they passionately embraced in 2016. Trump nominates Amy Coney Barrett to fill the seat, arguing that she is perfectly qualified for the high court because she's a woman, but not like super hot. Critics allege that Barrett belongs to a dangerous religious cult that subjugates women by forcing them to become Supreme Court justices. Everyone prepares for the cordial and informative confirmation process. In other political news, New York Times, in a politically devastating career-ending bombshell report, reveals that an analysis of Trump's tax records shows that pretty much his only major success as a businessman has been playing the part of a successful businessman on a TV show. Coming on the heels of two politically devastating bombshell reports earlier this month, one alleging that Trump mocked the military and one that he lied about the seriousness of the coronavirus, this brings an even 500 total number of times that Trump has been devastated by bombshell media reports. Joe Biden leaves Delaware briefly to campaign speech in Philadelphia, where he makes the following statement. If Donald Trump has his way, the complications from COVID-19, which are well beyond what they should be, it's estimated that 200 million people have died, probably by the time I finish this talk. Then it's back to Detroit, back to Delaware for Joe. The biggest political event of the month is a much-anticipated Trump-Biden debate. A lively affair featured frank and open exchange of sentence fragments, highlighted by a heroic but ultimately unsuccessful attempt on the part of the moderator, Chris Wallace, to silence the president with a taser. Biden inspires his supporters by appearing, most of the time, to be fully aware that he's participating in the debate. For his part, Trump displays presidential leadership by firmly yet calmly reassuring an anxious nation that the election will be a complete fraud. When it's over, both sides declare victory as Chris Wallace retreats into his dressing room to ingest Xanax pills through a funnel. I've had days like that. In other domestic news, here are these alarming developments. The federal deficit reached $3.3 trillion as the government continues its unchecked descent into a horrendous, unsustainable levels of debt, with neither political party even seriously acknowledging the danger, let alone taking meaningful action to prevent future generations of Americans from being permanently screwed. The Kardashians decide to stop making Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Meanwhile, as fires continue to devastate the West, the California legislature, meeting in an emergency session, votes to ban lightning. Abroad, the Middle East moves a step closer to eventually being on the verge of approaching the threshold of what could someday be a pathway to lasting peace, as the Trump administration announces yet another historic agreement. This one involving Bahrain, which the president says is apparently a country over there. In other foreign policy action, the president orders an airstrike on TikTok. If only. In college sports, both the Big Ten and the Pac-12 vote to resume playing football, citing improving COVID-19 situation and the fact that the Houston Astros are leading both conferences with a combined 179-0 record. Conference officials say will implement strict medical protocols to ensure the athletes can safely resume violently injuring each other. The pandemic continues to dominate the news in October, when the White House announces that President Trump is infected with the coronavirus. As with the First Lady, the White House staffers, and others who have been near the president at events where many people did not wear masks or observe social distancing. This seems to suggest, crazy as it sounds, that the virus, who could possibly have known this, is an infectious disease that you can catch from other people. In an effort to keep the nation informed on the president's health without creating confusion, the administration employs a two-pronged communication strategy. Prong 1. The president's doctors hold press debriefing when they say the president is doing fine. Prong 2. Immediately thereafter, the White House Chief of Staff and Mark Meadows tells reporters that the president's vital signs are worrying. While hundreds of certified Twitter users without medical degrees offer their insights into the situation, the president begins a course of a treatment at Walter Reed that includes an antibody cocktail, an antiviral drug, a steroid, and this really happened: a motorcade ride around the hospital. Trump's doctors described the motorcade as totally standard medical treatment and not insanely irresponsible at all. Meanwhile, the virus continues to spread around the White House, eventually affecting everyone in the executive branch above the rank of custodian. But never mind about those people. The important thing is the president recovers quickly and announces that COVID-19 is frankly no big deal for anybody who has a large team of doctors. 24/7 access to world-class medical facility and a helicopter. Then, having learned an important lesson from his experience, the president resumes holding massive rallies where people do not wear masks. The Senate confirms Amy Coney Barrett after she successfully completes the traditional Judiciary Committee hazing ritual in which she must answer questions for 3 consecutive days without actually saying anything. Joe Biden enters the final stretch of his campaign with a schedule that sometimes has him doing as many as 1 appearance a day. Also taking a brutal toll on the former vice president is the fact that he must repeatedly, day after day, deal with the grueling physical strain of not telling reporters what he thinks about packing the Supreme Court. In one appearance, when asked about this, Biden said, and this is an actual quote, people, "The moment I answer that question, the headline in every one of your peoples will be the answer to that question." While reporters wrestle with the Confucian profundity of this statement, Joe was whisked away back to Delaware. In other political action, Vice President candidates Mike Pence and Kamala Harris square off in the debate, and the only thing anyone remembers about it is 10 minutes later is that a fly landed on Pence's head. 2 weeks later, Trump and Biden have their second debate, during which Trump accuses Biden of wanting to force Americans to have tiny, small, little windows. And Biden says, "Come on," roughly 200 times. And they say many other things as well, but at this point, none of it makes any difference. In social media news, Twitter blocks the New York Post study about incriminating emails allegedly found on Hunter Biden's laptop, on the grounds the story is of questionable origin. This, of course, is a violation of Twitter's extremely strict accuracy policy, under which every single tweet that Twitter does allow to be published is 100% vetted and legit. In sports, the coronavirus caused major disruption in the fall football schedule, the result being that on a single afternoon, the New York Jets wind up losing to both the Kansas City Chiefs and Vassar. On a happier note, the World Series, for the 11th consecutive year, does not have in any way involve the New York Yankees. The month comes to a close with Halloween, the spooky, scary time when the nation is haunted by a relentless onslaught of political TV attack acts in which basically every candidate for public office is depicted as a blood-sucking, hideous ghoul. Voters universally detest these ads and the toxic political climate they create, but highly paid campaign consultants continue to produce them. For a sound, data-derived, poll-tested reason. These consultants are scum. With October finally over, a divided, weary nation trudges into the crucial month of November, when finally, after all the politics and platitudes, the debates and the demagoguery and the rallies and the riots and the allegations and the alliteration. Hey, I see what you did there. It's time for the American people to do what they have done since the founding of this republic. Eat all of their leftover Halloween candy. And there's a lot of it this year because there are very few trick-or-treaters, leaving many Americans with no choice but to snort down the weight of an adult male Cocker Spaniel and mini Snickers. But we do it because we're Americans, damn it. Then, at last, it's Election Day. Millions of voters lurch to the polls, unless they've already voted, in which case that they remain on the sofa, burping the chocolate fumes and anxiously waiting the cable TV network of their choice. Political experts are confidently predicting an easy Biden win, possibly a landslide, based on input of professional pollsters armed with conclusions derived from sophisticated statistical analysis of data obtained via surveys of the 7 people who still answer the telephone. But the actual race turns out to be much closer, and several days pass without a clear winner as the various states count ballots via their individual methods under our quirky, zany electoral college system. Florida, which has totally screwed up every single previous election, surprises everybody by reporting the vote count almost immediately. Thanks to an executive order by Governor Ron DeSantis to just go ahead and reuse the results from 2016 since we already counted those already. But the process is much slower in states such as states as Pennsylvania, which uses the base 17 numbering system. Oh my god. And Arizona, where by law, votes must be tabulated on cowhides. It's not until Saturday that the news media calls the election for Biden. President Trump accepts the defeat with a calm, mature grace and dignity that we have become his trademark as a leader of some imaginary nation that we are fantasizing about in this sentence. Because in reality, Trump claims he won the election by a lot, but it's being stolen by him via a vast, sophisticated, malignant, and purely hypothetical vote fraud scheme. To combat this fraud, the president forms a crack legal team. I think you mean a legal team on crack. Headed by formal, sane person, Rudy Giuliani, who presides over the what future scholars will view as the single greatest event in the history of America, if not the world. This occurs when the president announces via tweet that his lawyers will hold a news conference at the Four Seasons, Florida. Now, everyone assumes he means the Four Seasons Hotel, but in fact, and here we have definitive proof that there is a God, and he, or she, has an excellent sense of humor. The event takes place in the parking lot of a company called Four Seasons Total Landscaping, and is located across the street from a crematorium and down the block from the Fantasy Island adult books and novelties. We're not making this up. Nobody could make this up. The Four Seasons event turned out to be a good indicator of the competence of the Trump legal team, and it eventually becomes clear to everyone not living in the White House that Trump will not successfully challenge Biden's win. But it's also clear that just as in 2016, the media elite greatly underestimate the support for Trump, who somehow got more than 74 million votes, despite the fact that the media elite doesn't personally know any Trump supporters, and in fact has devoted 4 solid years to declaring that anyone who doesn't hate Trump is a racist idiot. So who on earth could these 74 million Americans be? It's a mystery that will probably never be solved. At least not by the media elite. Meanwhile, on a coronavirus front, there is good news and bad news. The good news is that several drug companies announced that they have developed promising vaccine candidates, while Budweiser supports significant progress in a hard seltzer that can also be used as hand sanitizer. Bad news is that the number of cases in what feels like the 37th wave is spiking once again, and American consumers are once again creating shortages of toilet paper by buying enough rolls per household to wipe every butt in Denmark for a year. Many states impose tough new COVID restrictions, Most notably California, which bans, quote, all human activity not personally involving the governor. Speaking in states of taking action, in November 12th, the nation pauses to observe the 50th anniversary of the date that the Oregon State Highway Department attempted to dispose of an 8-ton whale on a beach by detonating 1,000 pounds of dynamite underneath the carcass. The result being the vast quantities of putrid whale flesh were blasted into the sky, and then, because of gravity, which apparently nobody had told the Oregon State Highway Department about, it came back down all over the crowd of spectators gathered to watch. Historians agree that this is the greatest thing that has ever happened in the world prior to the Trump legal team's press conference at the Four Seasons Total Landscaping. In arts and culture news, the Guinness World Records announced the most watched video in YouTube history with over 7 billion views is Baby Shark, which was created by a South Korean company called Pinkfong. And for some inexplicable reason, we have never took out with a nuclear missile, even though the entire world would have thanked us. President Trump, carrying a cherished White House tradition, pardons turkeys named Corn and Cobb, and former National Security Advisor named Michael Flynn. Corn and Michael Flynn were convicted of making false statements to the FBI. Cobb was serving a 4-year sentence for tax evasion. Joe Biden, preparing for a historically difficult transition into a presidency that will be confronted with a daunting array of critical challenges both at home and abroad, fractures his foot while playing with the dog. As the month draws to a close, Americans celebrate Thanksgiving as the Pilgrims did, by gathering with their loved ones for a communal meal in the basement with the lights off so as to avoid detection by the authorities. And then, at last, the finish line of this wretched year looms ahead as we stagger into December, which begins the good news and bad news of the economy. The good news: holiday retail sales are strong. The bad news: most of these sales are online purchases of the Four Seasons Total Landscaping t-shirts. Now, the other hot holiday wish item is the coveted Sony PlayStation 5 gaming console, which is nearly impossible to find in stores due to the fact that it does not physically exist. We made a bunch of cool commercials about it, states a Sony marketing executive, but for actual device that you can plug in? Nah. Long term, the economic outlook remains troubling, with the U.S. economy being kept afloat mainly by consumers making monthly payments to Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, Disney+, CBS All Access, Hollywood, HBO Now, Peacock, HBO Max, Discovery+, Stars, Chickadee, Eyeballs, Amazon Super Deluxe, HBO Medium Rare, Chickadee+, Disney Extra Special, Amazon Supreme Unleaded, Supreme Unleaded, oh my god, HBO gluten-free, and a bewildering array of other streaming services that consumers rarely watch but keep paying for because they can't figure out how to cancel their subscription. These people are pumping billions of dollars a month into the economy, states Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. God help us if they ever remember their passwords. In other national news, President Trump, faced with a soaring coronavirus cases and congressional stalemate over a desperately needed relief package, devotes his energies as chief executive into tweeting approximately once per hour that the election was rigged. The Trump legal team, alleging that there's a massive organized conspiracy to commit vote fraud, files multiple lawsuits but achieves basically the same legal outcome as Hamilton Berger, the suspendedly ineffective district attorney on the Perry Mason TV show, who went to court week after week after many seasons and almost never won a case. Which only proves how massive and organized the conspiracy is. While the president continues to insist that he was re-elected, members of the staff quietly prepare for the transition by updating their resumes and conducting a search for the briefcase containing the nuclear launch codes, believed to last be seen on the back of a golf cart in Bedminster, New Jersey. As a certain gradually descends into the Trump administration, it becomes Joe Biden's turn to take center stage and face the harsh scrutiny of the Washington press corps. Leading the way is CNN, which broadcasts a hard-hitting 2-hour special report on the incoming Biden administration, featuring a panel of 8 journalists who unanimously agree that if George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Abraham Lincoln were alive today, they would definitely fracture their feet playing with a dog. Okay. In business news, Amazon pays $237 billion to acquire Four Seasons Total Landscaping. If only. In the arts, Rolling Stone magazine declares that the #1 song of 2020 is WAP. W-A-P. Which is an abbreviation for something that we cannot publish on a family newspaper. And I don't want to get demonetized, so I'm not going to say it either. Anyway. But suffice it to say that if any year deserved to have its declared the best song, that year would be 2020. Finally, after 12 nightmarish months, 2020 draws to a close. And here we must interrupt our narrative to let you, the reader, or viewer, as the case may be, in on a little secret. Because of newspaper deadlines, we have to turn in the year in review in mid-December before the year is actually over. Normally this doesn't matter because the holiday season is to be a slow news time. But this is no normal year. And we're nervous, and we worry that something major, which we mean bad, will happen after our deadline. Something involving the election, or the virus, or some awful thing that we can't even imagine. Like, for example, maybe astronomers will announce that because the human race snacking at historically high levels during the pandemic lockdown, the Earth has gained a huge amount of mass, which has slowed the planet down to orbit the sun, and as a result, it will make the calendar work out, and we have to add an entire month of 2020. And this month will be called Pandemic, which you probably think can't possibly happen, right? Right? That's a crazy idea. As crazy as masked Americans fighting over toilet paper. Our point is that we don't want anything else to happen this year, including when it will end. So we're just hoping that it eventually does, and that next year is nothing like it. And in that spirit, we close with the wish we always offer at the end of our annual review, although this time it's more of a prayer. Happy New Year.